Let's jump right into it. Number 10. The Judas Cradle. Picture this. You're sitting on the world's most uncomfortable chair, except this chair has a pyramid-shaped point designed to slowly penetrate your body. Medieval executioners would suspend victims over this device and lower them onto the point, using ropes to control the pressure. The torture could last hours or even days, depending on how merciful the executioner felt that morning. What makes this particularly twisted is that it was designed not to kill quickly, but to maximize suffering. The victim's own body weight became the instrument of torture. Today, this would violate every single article of the Geneva Convention regarding cruel and unusual punishment. The psychological torture alone, knowing that any movement would increase your agony, was considered part of the punishment's effectiveness. Number 9. Flaying Alive. If you think getting a bad sunburn is painful, imagine having your entire skin removed while you're still conscious. Medieval executioners developed this into an art form, carefully peeling away skin in strips to keep victims alive as long as possible. They'd start with extremities and work inward, ensuring maximum survival time during the process. The most skilled practitioners could keep someone conscious for hours. What's absolutely chilling is that this wasn't reserved for the worst criminals. Sometimes people were flayed for crimes as minor as poaching on noble land or speaking against the church. Modern international law classifies any form of torture resulting in severe physical mutilation as a crime against humanity. The fact that medieval societies not only allowed but celebrated public flayings shows just how different our concepts of justice have become. Number 8. The breaking wheel. This contraption looked innocent enough, just a large wooden wheel, but its purpose was anything but innocent. Victims would be tied to the wheel, and executioners would systematically break every major bone in their body using iron bars or hammers. The process followed a specific sequence: arms first, then legs, then the spine. The broken victim would then be braided through the wheel's spokes and left to die of exposure, sometimes taking days. What made this particularly cruel was the public nature. These wheels were often placed on hills or tall poles, so the entire community could watch the victim's slow death. Families were sometimes forced to watch their loved ones suffer this fate. Under today's international law, this would constitute both torture and cruel execution, violations that could result in war crimes tribunals. Number 7. Scaphism, also known as the boats. This Persian-inspired punishment that found its way into medieval Europe involved trapping the victim between two boats or wooden tubs, with only their head, hands, and feet exposed. Here's where it gets truly horrific. They'd force-feed the victim milk and honey, then smear more honey on their exposed body parts. The combination would cause severe diarrhea, and the victim would essentially marinate in their own waste while insects were attracted to the sweet coating. Death came from a combination of dehydration, exposure, and septic shock from insect bites and infection. This could take weeks. The psychological torture was immense. Victims remained fully conscious and aware throughout most of the process. Modern torture conventions specifically prohibit prolonged suffering and degrading treatment, making this practice illegal under multiple international agreements. Number 6. Drawing and quartering. You've probably heard this phrase used casually, but the reality was absolutely brutal. The victim would first be dragged through streets behind a horse, that's the drawing part, but that was just the warm-up. Next came disembowelment while still alive, followed by beheading, and finally cutting the body into 4 parts, the quartering. Each piece would be displayed in different parts of the city as a warning. What makes this particularly savage is that the disembowelment was done carefully to avoid immediate death. Executioners would remove intestines slowly, sometimes burning them in front of the victim's face. The crowd was encouraged to participate, hurling objects and insults. This level of public degradation and torture violates numerous modern conventions about human dignity, even in death. The display of body parts alone would constitute desecration of human remains under current international law. Number 5. The Pear of Anguish. This device looked deceptively simple, a metal pear-shaped object that could be inserted into body orifices. But here's the nightmare: it was designed to expand. Using a screw mechanism, the device would slowly open inside the victim, causing internal tearing and immense pain. Different versions existed for different orifices, and the punishment was often tailored to match the alleged crime. The device rarely caused immediate death, instead creating internal injuries that would lead to slow, agonizing infection and eventual death days or weeks later. What's particularly disturbing is how this punishment was used disproportionately against women accused of adultery or speaking against their husbands. The sexualized nature of this torture would today be classified as both gender-based violence and sexual torture, serious violations of multiple human rights treaties. Number 4. Sawing in half. Exactly what it sounds like, but worse than you're imagining. Victims would be suspended upside down and slowly sawed in half, starting from the groin. The upside-down position ensured maximum blood flow to the brain, keeping the victim conscious longer. Executioners would work deliberately slowly, and victims often remained conscious until the saw reached their abdomen. This could take hours. The public nature of these executions was considered part of the deterrent effect. Crowds would gather as if attending a festival, with vendors selling food and drink. Children were brought to watch as educational experiences. The normalization of such extreme violence in medieval society shows how differently they viewed human suffering. Under modern law, this constitutes both torture and cruel execution, violations that would warrant immediate international intervention. Number 3. The blood eagle. This Norse-inspired punishment involved cutting open the victim's back and pulling their ribs outward to resemble wings. The lungs would then be pulled out and spread over the wings, often while the victim was still alive. The process required surgical precision to avoid immediate death, making it a demonstration of the executioner's skill as much as a punishment. What made this particularly horrifying was its ritualistic nature. It wasn't just execution, but a ceremony designed to honor the gods through human suffering. Victims were sometimes drugged to remain conscious longer, and the process could take hours. The combination of extreme physical torture with religious ritual makes this particularly disturbing to modern sensibilities. Current international law specifically prohibits torture that includes religious or ideological elements, recognizing how such combinations amplify psychological trauma. Number 2. Lingchai, or death by 1,000 cuts. This Chinese practice that influenced medieval European torture involved systematically removing small pieces of flesh from a living victim. The goal was to keep the person alive and conscious for as long as possible, while slowly dismantling their body. Executioners studied anatomy to know exactly where to cut to avoid vital organs and major blood vessels. The process could last for days, with victims receiving medical attention between sessions to ensure survival. Photographs of these executions exist from as late as 1905, showing how recently such practices continued. What makes this particularly chilling is the methodical, almost scientific approach to prolonging suffering. The executioner's skill was measured by how long they could keep someone alive during the process. Modern torture conventions specifically address prolonged suffering, making any form of extended torture illegal regardless of cultural or historical context. Number 1. Crucifixion with medieval variations. While crucifixion itself was ancient, medieval executioners developed new refinements that made the original Roman method look merciful. They discovered that by adjusting the position of the nails and adding a small seat, they could extend the dying process from hours to days. Some variations included periodic lifting and lowering of the cross, breaking and resetting bones, or adding weights to increase suffering. The psychological torture was immense. Victims could see their families in the crowd, and last words were often recorded for public distribution. What makes medieval crucifixion particularly brutal compared to its ancient predecessor is how it became a spectacle of extended suffering rather than relatively quick execution. The crowd participation was encouraged, with people throwing objects or making requests for specific torments. Modern international law prohibits not just torture and cruel execution, but also public degradation and the involvement of civilians in execution processes, making these medieval spectacles violations on multiple levels. I'll make similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.